First of all was getting out of accountancy and going into technology, and it's actually finding something that first of all I was good at, and secondly I enjoyed, so that was kind of handy. And the second one was when I was probably mid-late 20s and decided, because I'd come out of school, I hadn't got any further qualifications, so I decided to go on and do a part-time MBA, which took me probably the best part of 5 years to get that done, and that was a real eye-opener, especially for what I was doing work-wise. I've kind of been through probably just about every range of job you could imagine. So, in fact, my very first job was painting cranes. I had to paint them yellow and orange and wear a nice white suit with a mask and stuff. It was a great job. And then kind of all the way through to running large groups in IBM and around 350 consultants in Capgemini around Europe setting up, this is back in 98, 99, so setting up large telcos for their convergent media services, so the likes of StarHub in Singapore, Belgacom, etc, etc. And then came to the conclusion that the corporate stuff really sort of wasn't for me. And like I say, I've been through everything from kind of where I started, the big corporate, and then through into getting up in the morning, going into the back of my garage and working at home. I wanted to, it's actually quite difficult at this. You kind of get the feeling that you want to set up your own business, you want to go it alone and do it yourself. And so you almost kind of stick to what you know. So my background was consulting and management consulting, etc. So set up my own consulting business, which is actually, with the contacts that we had, was surprisingly easy to start, desperately difficult to grow, but relatively easy to start. And for those of you that kind of maybe end up in that kind of line of work and ultimately start running your own, word of warning, as soon as you get over 15, 20 people, you are in effect running a kindergarten, and it's tough work. You basically become a HR manager. And so we had quite a successful consulting business. I got bought out of that and was looking for something that was more product focused. Again, kind of probably within my area of expertise around telecoms and media, but something that was more focused around product than it was people. So back in 2002, created and started a business that did IPTV and video streaming over the internet, which was, I would reckon, probably about 10 years too early. So we had quite a few customers, and we were doing okay. And we did the very first over-the-top service for Philips in Amsterdam. There were some key parts about that business. At the time, it sounded really good, but there was two problems with it. First of all, when we first started out, we hadn't really done the market research properly or enough. It just sounded like a good idea. So in actual fact, the numbers of people that were interested in watching a movie about that square on your PC was getting very close to zero. And the technology wasn't particularly there either. So we kind of we moved things around a little bit, and then we got involved with Philips, and we did this over-the-top service, and etc. Another key point there, we had a really good deal going with Philips, and we didn't really capitalise on that particular opportunity, and we didn't kind of take it and go through the marketing and PR. And you'll find, as some of you set up your own businesses, you'll make loads and loads of mistakes on the way, and you'll kind of look back and go, blimey, did I actually spend all that money? Did we actually do this? Did we? And that just comes with experience. And having kind of been through, and that was actually reasonably successful for a while. 2008, 2007, 2008, the recession hit, the banking crisis, and then we went from around 50 to 60,000 pounds a month of revenue to 6 within 3 months. Just the whole market collapsed overnight, and that's when you kind of, at that point in time, you sort of realise that how how you cope in very, very, very stressful situations. So when you're on the brink of losing the house and etc. etc. So you do learn very, very quickly about your own capacity to deal with stress and problems and issues. And so that business we went through creditors meetings and insolvency and etc. etc. Horrible, horrible time, but deeply, deeply character building. If you can get through a creditors meeting when people are shouting at you and wanting money, and you kind of come out the other side and you end up, as we have done with a few of them, going for a beer with them afterwards, you kind of, it does tend to build a little bit of character. And so the reason why I'm kind of going through all of that is because it kind of brings me to a point where, did I really believe in the consulting business? I don't think I particularly did. Was I clear about what we were trying to do with the ITV business, the IPTV business? Probably not, actually. And so I think there are, which kind of brings me to where I am now in the business that we have now, and kind of walking through that process. There are two, for me, there are two things. You are either solving a problem or righting a wrong. One of those two, or even both, is even better. And it doesn't really matter whether you're creating a consulting business or a product business or a service business. If you can see one of those two things, so a consulting business, for instance, solving a problem might be that you see in other consulting businesses that it doesn't service the SME market, or it may be that the righting a wrong might be that the sale of kind of risk management doesn't work. So there are ways of doing it. I'm not saying that that particular type of industry is wrong. I'm just saying that those two rules for me still apply. So, and I think where I am now with the product we have now, we are doing both. I think we are righting a wrong, and I think we are solving quite a serious problem. And that kind of generates belief. And it generates not just belief in you guys doing what you're doing, it actually generates belief in those people around you. And they're buying into an ethos. So they're not just buying into a business that does some stuff, they're buying into a business that is helping people, or it's trying to help businesses, and everyone's bought into that kind of thing. So, so bringing you up to date with what we have now, I'm running a setup, started from scratch, a business called Handle. And as Dermot mentioned previously, Handle's a new router that it does timer schedules, but the interesting thing is it does timer schedules on the internet, not just inside the home, but outside the home as well. So if a child has a mobile phone or a tablet, then the whole internet access on that is switched off at particular times. So it might be bedtime from 7 at night through to 9 at night through to 7 in the morning. There will be no internet access on the device, whether they cancel Wi-Fi and try to go onto 3G, etc. And we also we have anti-tamper features on there, and we've got anti-bullying services on there as well. So, and I won't kind of necessarily bore you with the details with all of that here. But from my point of view, that was set up because we had some hideous issues with one of my children, my middle boy, and he was getting horribly bullied online, obsessive behaviour, and to the point that actually made him quite ill. And we looked around for things to help manage those issues, and there was pretty much nothing. And so I decided to do it myself. And I suppose I was reasonably lucky in that I got the technology background, so I knew what we were doing, and I got some of the business background, so I got an idea about how to kind of kick things off. But a hugely different business to where I was before. So we're now into producing something, a thing, with a piece of electronics on it and software and an enclosure and all this sort of stuff, which is very, very different to where I was before. And it's kind of occurred to me over time that there's almost a process. You could almost kind of create a sausage machine for all of this. So when you first set off and you've got the idea, I still think those two rules apply. Does it solve a problem? Are you righting or wrong? And if you kind of get through those two bits, then you're on to the next stage. And for us, the next stage was, before you can go and tell anything about this epiphany that you've had in terms of idea, you have to be able to try and protect it. So the next stage for us was looking at patents. How we were going to, number one, how we were going to define the patents, and secondly, how on earth we were going to pay for the patents, because patents are very, very expensive. So we found a local patent lawyer. We've tried to do everything locally as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen a few other businesses make is that with not a lot of money, they seem to think that outsourcing everything and production and all the other stuff that goes with it to the lowest possible price point, which probably brings you back to China, isn't always the best idea, and it can cause huge delays and timing issues, etc. So we were very clear to begin with that we were going to try and do everything close to where we were, because I quite like the idea of, you know, the guy, for instance, who's doing the electronic side, the PCB, he's 10 minutes from my house. I can go out of my house in the morning, if there's anything wrong, give him a boot and then come back home. So that's great, that all works. And so we went through the process of the patents and found a local patent lawyer for reasons that are completely unknown to me. There is a very good patent lawyer in Rotherham, who knew? They've created the patents for us. You have to have a reasonable idea of what it is that you're actually trying to do, because you can't actually patent a concept. You have to be able to patent a thing. You can in the States, but that's another matter. You have to be able to patent a thing or something that is particularly unique. And so that does force you through a thought process of how you're going to define something that means that it makes it attractive to investors, and there's still something that's attractive to customers. So we've gone through that process of patenting, and the patent process is not a particularly short one either. So to get patents in the UK, you're looking at about 18 months. To replicate those patents across the US and China, etc., you're probably looking at about another 3 years. So it's not a short time process. But once you've done that, once your patent is in process, then your product is protected. No one can go and if anyone copies it, then there are issues. So that's the kind of first thing. Once you've got those in place, again, one of the mistakes that I've seen companies make before, especially when we're doing the management consulting side, is that people have all these lovely patents and they're absolutely great, and they show you the shiny product at the end of it, and that looks nothing like what they've patented, not even close. So they spent all that money on a patent, and then what they've produced is just irrelevant. So you've got to make sure that what you're producing matches the patents. I know it sounds really daft, but there's lots and lots of people that don't do that. And make sure it does match the patent properly. The next stage is, once you've got there, the next stage for us was the business plan, and looking at what market were we going to address, how much money did we need, where was the manufacturing going to be, what was the unit cost, what was the margin, who were we going to sell to, how are we going to sell to them, etc. And we were actually very lucky. Dermot introduced us to one of the students from last year's course, who did a superb job on helping us build a business plan. Then once you have that, you're then looking at, I think, and this is a really important point as well, is looking at those bits that you are not capable of doing. I'll give you an example. Everybody thinks that they can do marketing, okay? And I mean everybody thinks that they can do marketing. It's not until you get in front of someone who can do marketing that you realise that you can't do marketing, in actual fact. And I'm quite lucky in that, obviously, I've been around the houses quite a bit, and the groups of contacts that we've got over time has really helped. So our product marketing director is the ex-product marketing director of Cisco in Europe, and he is just genius. If you think you can do marketing, go talk to Gavin. You'll probably realise that you can't. He is just genius. So there were a number of areas where we were deficient. First one was having not just a CTO concept, but a CTO who could actually do some of the work as well. Next was hardware. Not really done hardware before, certainly not produced hardware before, so that was something. Marketing. We're selling in retail. I've got absolutely no experience of retail whatsoever, so got on the phone, did some ringing, a couple of colleagues that I've got, and we've got a guy who knows retail, and then there's an operations guy as well. So we end up with kind of 5 people, 4 of whom are plugging gaps that I wouldn't be able to plug. So we end up with a team of expertise now across all of the areas where I need help. Again, another kind of key point: just don't be afraid of asking for help. Everybody needs help, I regularly bang on doors and call in favours, etc., for things that I need doing, and I need some help or advice on. So you end up with you've now got the team, you've got the patent, you've got the plan. You kind of do need a first prototype. So we went through the process of getting the first prototype together. Slightly complicated for us because we got hardware and software and stuff going on the mobile phone as well. As much as everybody says that there isn't a great deal of cash around in terms of grants, there are little bits. You know, if you're prepared to go and search, you will find some little pockets of money here and there. You might need to get a little bit creative about how you spend them, but there are pockets of money here and there. So we got a grant, and that allowed us to do the first prototype. And I put in a little bit of cash myself to get hold of the initial boards and that sort of stuff. So, and then you get the nice shiny prototype and you test it and it works, and you think that's job done. That's great. This is terrific. I've got my product and it's all great. And then you sit in front of a buyer, a retail buyer, and the retail buyer will look at you, I guarantee, and go, "That is dreadful. That's awful." And you've just kind of stuck your baby in front of him, and he goes, "That's dreadful." So then, likes the concept, doesn't like the design and all that sort of stuff. So then you have to come away, redesign it. Again, the mistake we made to begin with is we didn't really use an industrial designer to begin with. So now we have an industrial designer who's actually created something that looks like you could probably sell it in a shop, whereas before you might have been struggling to sell it in a market. So so now we have that, and that's really good. And once you've kind of gone through all that, you will realise quite soon that you probably need some sort of investment. Before that, because before you can go to investment, you've got to sort of prove the market and get in front of people. If you don't like banging down doors, and if you don't like cold calling, and if you don't really like selling, go and find someone who does. In the initial stages, that is pretty much, at the moment, that is kind of pretty much what I do on a daily basis. I bang down doors, I get in front of people, I make phone calls, and sooner or later we kind of get where we need to be. And then I've got another couple of guys doing that with me as well. So, you know, for example, from a cold call, I found someone on LinkedIn, got their details, managed to get a phone call with them, and we now have our second meeting with Sky. Not next week, the week after. Same thing with Vodafone. We've had meetings with Vodafone. Same things with Deutsche Telekom. We have meetings with Deutsche Telekom. So you have to bang doors down. There is no point in creating your product and waiting for them to come, because I can guarantee you they won't. So from there, we then look at the investment side of things. I don't know whether you've done anything on the course around investment, etc. But the biggest thing around investment is it takes up huge amounts of time, and there are some interesting, alternatives to traditional venture capital, etc. So around the crowdfunding campaigns, be it equity or rewards, so kind of Kickstarter or Crowdcube, all really interesting. We're just going to start a Crowdcube campaign next week. But that getting to the point where that thing's going to go live has taken us 3.5 months. So even though we had the business plan, it still took us 3.5 months to get to that stage. And venture capital will probably take you, again, having been through that process, will probably take you a lot longer. And the reason why it tends to take so long is because you sit in front of a venture capitalist who will say to you, so how much do you need? And you go, £500,000. They go, great. So what's your valuation? And you go, 5 million. And then once he's pulled himself back up off the floor laughing at you, you then kind of go away and you rework it, and you go back to him, and he says, yeah, I still don't like it because of these things and those things, and that process may be taking 3 or 4 weeks. So then you go to the next one, so you kind of change the plan to match him, and then you go to the next one goes, don't really like those bits, I think you need to change that. So you do that, and then you go back to him and he goes, I still don't like it. And you will go through that process time and time and time again. It's the one thing I despise more than anything, setting up the business, is raising finance, because it's just, you can get in front of someone who's literally got out the wrong side of bed in the morning, and you're kind of dead in the water. So we are looking at raising just 150k of, there are things around called, I don't really know them, but there are really great tax efficient ways of investing in small businesses, which is called SEIS. So the 150k that we're raising, whoever puts any money in will get half of that back immediately. So they get a 50% rebate immediately through HMRC. So we're raising 150,000 through Crowdcube. Again, Crowdcube sounds great and Kickstarter sounds great, but the you then need to start doing things like you've got to get a script together, you've got to do the video, you've got to do the storyboard for the video, you've got to find someone to shoot the video on